Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. Today's show is part two of a two-part interview I did with Craig Campobasso, author of the UFO Hotspot Compendium, All the Places to Visit Before You Die or Are Abducted. The Hudson River Valley in New York was considered the number one UFO hotspot in the 1980s, and Pine Bush, also in New York, has been called the Area 51 of the East Coast. Both locations have experienced an unusual amount of UFO activity and otherworldly events over the years. Can you tell me about some of those events?
Sure. A lot of this in Pine Bush and the Hudson Valley, a lot of it was in the 80s, a little bit into the 90s. So in the Hudson Valley, they were seeing giant, all kinds of shapes of craft, a triangular, walnut shaped, all kinds. And there were times where they were so low in the sky that people were stopping in their cars, even on the freeways, to stop and just look up at it because they could literally almost reach up and touch it. That's how low they came, so people could believe that they were real. There was one man that was interviewed. I thought it was interesting because he thought he had never contemplated being abducted by aliens, and he had young children. He was a little terrified because they were really close, and he didn't know if that was going to happen to them, which it didn't. But in the Pine Bush area, it's interesting, in talking to one of the MUFON people there, is that there was a certain park that they built, or housing tract, that was only a place where scientists lived. It was guarded and gated, and that if you were visiting someone there, your name would have to be at the gate, but you couldn't drive there alone. They would drive you to that person's house and then pick you up when you left to make sure that you were going to the right place. What a lot of the local researchers thought was that they were building an underground base. Lots of people heard noises coming up from the ground. They heard all kinds of things throughout the middle of the night. And then one eyewitness, who I've known for a while and actually had contacted me many, many years ago, lived in upstate New York and used to see these gigantic manta ray looking ships that would come out at night and fly. And he explained that's what they look like, giant manta rays. And one time he was leaving an ashram at midnight, and when he was driving out the gate, one of these craft was literally hovering right over the school that was across the street. And he said it was just unbelievable to be there alone and looking at this thing and not knowing what was going to happen. And he said, and then it went off, and he said, and I started to follow it. He said, but then I started to notice patterns where small airplanes would come out at night over his parent farm. Then later, these manta ray ships would come out. So he started throwing what are those blankets over his body so that they couldn't see his heat signature through the planes. And then he would wait for those to come out, and he would film them and put them out. And he invited Dr. Bruce Hornet to come out, and he did as well. He investigated a lot of things in the Hudson Valley and Pine Bush. But what was interesting about the gentleman who saw the manta ray is that he said on top it had a turret, and the turret was like some kind of alligator skin, and it turned and it was like it was alive. He believed that whatever this base was, is that it was definitely alien and our military or government, a joint base, because if an airplane was going to come out and search to see who is out, then these craft followed. He believed that those craft were ours.
In Pascagoula, Mississippi in 1973, two fishermen were put into suspended animation and taken on on board a ship by a strange-looking robots, then examined by a malicious female alien. How did those men describe the ordeal they endured?
I will tell you, this is probably one of the most painful cases that Calvin Parker experienced. Calvin is still alive. Charles Hickson, who also was abducted, has passed away years ago. Now, Calvin needed a job. He called us. Calvin lived in another town. He called Charlie up, or Charles, and said, "I'm looking for a job." He got him a job in the shipyard. He came there. So on his first day in the shipyard afterwards, he said to Calvin, "Let's just go fishing." And they went to Calvin's house. His wife was angry that he was going fishing and not staying home for dinner with the kids. They went out, got some beers. Charles liked to drink beer. They went to the pier. And mind you, this is like a dilapidated part of the river. There is like old refrigerators, like people are throwing all of their old crap there. The pier was rusted. Everything was not in a good shape. And you're not supposed to fish there, but Calvin and him did anyway. So all of a sudden, they see these lights way off in the distance twinkling, and then all of a sudden, the next thing they know is they're turned facing the other direction where their car is parked in frozen animation, and they see a ship. And out of the ship come these three strange robots with these long, sort of carrot conical noses. And they come all the way out to where they are. They injected them with something. They then floated them into the craft and put them in separate rooms. Now, Calvin said he was not restricted on the thing, and that he called her the most evilest woman in the universe. That the things that she did to him, he will not repeat. He's never written it in a book. He's never told anyone. He never even told his publisher. I tried to get it out of him. He just won't speak about it because I don't think he wants to bring that memory back and bring her back. I think if he describes her or something, he thinks she's going to come back. When it was over, they both immediately went to the sheriff's station. They were so shooken up, and the sheriff left him in his office for a while, and they had a tape recorder going. And when he listened to it, just to hear their conversation of the fear of what just happened, he completely believed them. There were many other eyewitnesses. There's a Pascagoula incident documentary on Amazon, I believe, where all of these people from all over that area saw the craft and all of that particular night. So in Pascagoula, if anybody wants to visit there, they actually now have dedicated a whole area right where it happened. You can go up, you can read the giant plaque, and you can look right over in the area where it all took place. One of the women who works for the Chamber of Commerce, she loves Calvin so much. She said, definitely put my name and phone number and email address in the book. So if people want to know more, that they can contact me if they come here, which I thought was really great of her. But we hear of negative stories, but we don't hear one of complete pure evil stories. Now, the coolest thing is years later, he met Bud Hopkins, and Bud regressed him a couple of times. And I was able to get the permission to reprint the best bit of that regression that Calvin did with this female alien. And so this was not the first time she visited Calvin.
In Shag Harbor, Nova Scotia, Canada, in 1967, the UFO was seen by a number of witnesses. After behaving strangely, the craft, without warning, nosedived into the water 200 to 300 yards offshore. The Royal Canadian Mounted Police were called in to investigate. Could you share some of the details about that incident?
A young man named Laurie, he was 18 years old. He was with his girlfriend. They were on the beach and they saw this object coming down, and then it looked like it was going on a fast trajectory, and it crashed into the ocean. Now, they believed it was a plane, so they immediately called the mounted police. So they came out, they got a boat, they started heading out. They got some guys who were fishermen who were also rescuers. They started going out on a boat, and as they got out there, what they were seeing were these sort of, it looked like bulbs of this yellow orangish light bobbing in the ocean. And as they were getting closer and closer, they just dove deeper and deeper down beneath the ocean. So when they got there, they didn't see any wreckage. They didn't see any people around in the water. But what was left for a very long space, like maybe a mile, was this yellow foam. So Chris Stiles, who reopened the case in 95, I asked him, I said, did anybody get a sample of that foam to test it? He said, Craig, when they reached down, they had nets, but when it went through the net, it just dissolved and went right through. So they were never able to get that. When Chris reopened the case, what was fascinating is that they later learned that that craft had gone under the water towards Shelburne. When it was there, the Navy knew it was there, and so they put some ships over it. And about a week later, they decided, okay, well, we're going to dive down there and see exactly what this thing is. But then a sister ship came under the water and joined the other ship, and then they were there for about a week. So it seemed that the sister ship helped repair that ship, and then they saw that they traveled under the water to Maine, and then they both flew up and out of the water, taking the secrets of who they were with them as well. That's the story in a thumbnail version. I have a really good detailed version in the book, and about all of the different investigations and things that were around it at that particular time, and everything else that Chris drummed up.
The two most famous UFO incidents to occur in the New England area are the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill, the first widely reported abduction case in the United States, and the Allagash abductions, which were the first reported cases of humans being approached by ant-like creatures. In both cases, the abductees were probed and examined by their abductors. I'd like you to tell me, Craig, about those abductions and if there were any similarities regarding to what the abductees experienced.
I think the only similarity is that they were not there to harm them, and they weren't there to rape them of genetic materials. They were pretty much doing what we do to other animals to see where their progression is in bodily forms. Betty and Barney were examined a lot. There was a leader who did not look like the typical, what we would call grays, that seemed to be the workers on the ship. Betty didn't believe that they were negative, but the leader was a little different looking. He had a bigger head. He had bumps all over his skin. His eyes were a little slanted, and they were like a gecko's eye. And his skin was blue, gray, and aluminum. So Betty had a conversation with him when she was up there, and she quite liked the leader. She named him Junior. He told her he showed her a star map of where they're from and in Zeta Reticuli. And then many years later, when we had the maps to those kind of sections, it was proven that that's exactly where they were from. I believe that it really affected Barney more than it affected Betty. These kind of experiences stay with you for a very long time. So there was that. The one with the ant beings is just so interesting because we've never heard anything about ant beings before. So for two brothers who were twins and two of their friends decide they want to go fishing in Allagash, a lake in Maine, but you can only fly two people at a time in a small plane with your gear to get there. That's how remote it is. So you are in the middle of nowhere and you're all alone out. Now, they're not the only campers that are out there. So they get there, they go find their little island that they're going to be on. They do see other people that they talk to. The first night that they're there, they see a giant shining orb way across the lake over the trees. It's huge. And they just made note of it. They didn't think anything of it. They go out fishing that night and they would make fire, a big giant fire, so they could find their way back. One of the other nights that they go out, they see this giant orby looking thing again over the lake. And one of the guys says, God, I wonder what would happen if I flashed my flashlight at it. He did. And all of a sudden, it had a searchlight that came down from the hull and it went directly to where they are. And the craft then was right over them. That's all they remember. They remember being back in their boat, going towards where their campsite was, where they had just built a big, giant roaring fire. And there's missing 2 hours of time, and the fire is very low. And they kind of think it's strange, but they don't think anything of it. So they go home. Many, many, many years later, one of the twins starts having dreams about being on this craft with these ant beings. And what he doesn't know is his twin is having the same dreams. And it's really, really messing with their psyche. And so they finally confide in each other. They go and they talk to the other 2 guys. One of the guys didn't remember anything like that at all. And one of the other guys did. So the 3 guys got regress. And what they found was that they were naked on this craft with these ant creatures who were examining them. It is just a strange, interesting story. But then I just saw something that Dr. Michael Salla posted interviewing a military guy in Florida who just went down per our government to meet with ant creatures who live on the inner earth to retrieve something from them. This gentleman said it took them quite some time to get way down to where they were going. They had never met these creatures before, but he said that they were very formidable and very nice. And what they did is they gave them a bunch of seeds to their plant and tree life, because evidently they have trees down there that spread its roots out over the land. And they have these little straws that come up and they water the land. So this tree is sort of like literally like a real tree of life that gives life across the land. And I just thought that that was fascinating, because now we're starting to hear some other stories about ant beings.
A wide range of extraordinary paranormal events and unexplained phenomena have been reported to take place on a regular basis at the Skinwalker Ranch in Vernal, Utah. Could you, Craig, tell me about some of those events?
First people that own it were the Shermans. They were having strange things, cow mutilations. He once, one night, saw a gigantic wolf, like huge, come out of a portal, and he tried shooting at it, but it wouldn't die, and then it was gone. They didn't like this negative vibration that was going on, so they sold it to Bigelow. And Bigelow brought his team in, and they went and they did a lot of research on this UFO and paranormal phenomenon on the land. Then when Bigelow was done, he sold it to Brandon Fugel, who now has the show on the History Channel called Skinwalker Ranch. They've had 3 seasons, and they are literally doing every kind of test known to man to figure out what's going on with all these anomalies. Like on one of their big giant mountains that's a plateau, they have anomalous lights at night that just blink. Nobody knows where these lights are coming from. It's the same thing as at Isetti Ranch. If you look down a couple of miles at Mount Adams, those same lights are on the mountain. It's the same phenomena as the Marfa light in Texas, and nobody can figure out what this phenomena is. Brandon named it the Skinwalker Ranch because of the giant wolf that had shown itself. But they've captured, when they've done their experiments, they have definitely captured the UFOs up in the sky. One of their cows, when a UFO was in the sky, just keeled over dead from fear. There's so much that goes on there. A lot of people believe that there is something beneath the land land that either the extraterrestrials don't want us to know about, or the government doesn't want us to know about, or both doesn't want us to know about.
In your research for the UFO Hotspot Compendium, did you, Craig, find any commonalities regarding the landscape of the areas that have and are attracting an unusually high number of UFOs and other paranormal phenomena taking place at those locations?
Well, ECETI Ranch, it has high galactic travel. If you go there, you have to make a reservation through their website to go sky watching there. So just know that, and all that information's in the book. You will, through night vision binoculars, see the craft way up high in the sky. You will also see them interacting with the craft through a laser and having it move in different directions by talking to it, having it power up, and seeing the craft get really bright in the sky, that kind of thing. Sometimes there's one craft, two crafts, three crafts. Sometimes there's a plethora of craft that are seen. Now, the ranch also knows from just being there for all of these years that below Mount Adams is a benevolent extraterrestrial base. They see the crafts going in and out of the mountain all the time. When we see the anomalies of these crafts, like if they're solid and all of a sudden they turn to light, they're shifting into the fourth dimension to go through solid matter. And when they get back in, then they go back to the other matter. My whole screen just shifted sideways. That's so weird. There we go. Okay, now it's back. That was so strange. Stan, what are you doing?
What happened?
My whole screen went sideways.
Wow, I don't know. Some of those this is a paranormal show.
It's a paranormal show.
We just had a paranormal happening.
We
I have
did.
no idea.
Did.
Okay. Should viewers of Paranormal Yacker want to buy the UFO Hotspot Compendium, all the places to visit before you die or are abducted? Again, a great title. I compliment you for that. How do they go about doing that?
If they would like me to autograph it to them using their name and sign it with a little message, they can do that through my website, which is autobiography of ANET.com. On the homepage, I have my 4-book series, The Autobiography of an Extraterrestrial Saga. And then if you want either the ET Species Almanac or the UFO Hotspot Compendium, click on Other Books in the tab, and then you could purchase those books there. It's Christmas time coming, so you can buy these gifts for your friends. And if you want me to sign them to your friends and mail them to you so you can give them out as Christmas gifts, just email me through the website and say, hey, Craig, I just bought 3 books. Sign one to Johnny, Susie, and Jimmy, right? Then I'd be happy to do that.
Excellent suggestion. Craig Campobasso, I thank you for being my guest on Paranormal Yacker. I wish you much deserved success with your book. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Stan. Pleasure being here.
Hi, everyone. This is Stan Mallow, the Paranormal Yacker. I hope you enjoyed the interview you just watched. To be sure you're amongst the first to receive new interviews when they're released and to have access to previous ones, subscribe to my free YouTube channel. To do that, all you have to do is press the subscribe button on your screen.